In today's video, I'm going to rank every single Cuphead boss, including the DLC, from worst to best. This is completely my opinion, but let me know yours down below. This channel just hit 200 subscribers, so thank you so very much. Anyways, let's get into the video. Okay, so here's the chart and boss I'll be using as the demonstration. First of all, I'm going to be scoring it on its visual aspects, such as, how the boss generally looks, how smooth the transitions between phases are, and how generally movable and nice looking they are. Next up is difficulty, and this is quite an interesting rating because it's not based on how hard they are, it's based on how enjoyable and replayable they are, depending on their difficulty. Next up is music, and every boss in the game has, a music track, so I'll be rating basically how much I like the track. And then there's fun. It's a very general category, but it's basically just how much fun do I have when playing that boss. And finally, there's creativity. It's basically just how much thought did they actually have to put in to make this boss. And of course, this will all add up to a total, which will determine their ranking on my list. Number 25, Guppy Le Grand. The issue with Guppy for me, personally, is the fact that he is basically a King Dice mini-boss, but made as his own boss and given a bit of extra health. Cool design, right? I do kind of like the blob. It isn't too creative. It is just dash simulator. Every attack that he does can be avoided with a duck or a dash. His music is pretty basic, but I mean, this is all to be expected. Number 24, Sally Stage Play. Now I hear you all. You're all going, what? But that's an Aisle 3 boss. How dare he place it below most of the Aisle 1 bosses? Well, I've never liked Sally Stage Play. She is kind of easy. The amount of projectiles and just the awkwardness of the boss. Every phase is awkward. The first and second phase, they weren't creative with really whatsoever because they just basically changed the layout and added a few things. Overall though, her creativity score is the highest because I do like the theatre setting. I like how they've done the curtains, and I especially like the third phase with all the props. But overall, her music kind of annoys me a little. There's a lot of RNG in this boss, and you can just be screwed over by something unavoidable. Number 23, the Root Pack. Now, I have to be fair, they are the tutorial boss for the game. They're usually the first boss you'll fight in the game, and I do actually quite like their designs. I like the carrot, the potato, and the onion, to be honest. They're all pretty nice. It's just because they are so basic that they can't get a good score compared to all the other bosses. Their music is generic, and their attacks are so simple that they're easily avoidable. There isn't too much replayability in them. If you go into them, it's rare that you're actually even going to get hit. Number 22, Beppy the Clown. I can already tell I'm going to get a bunch of hate for putting Beppy here, but personally I find his boss fight quite awkward. The third phase, especially when the golden horse comes in, you cannot jump, and it's so annoying. It is quite random, whether or not you'll have to jump, because if the roller coaster comes in when the golden horse comes down, you are going to get hit. It's very rare that you don't. It's really, really annoying. Generally, the roller coaster, it's a creative addition, I will agree. I've given him a good score for creativity because I really like how they develop through the boss fight to be different carnival attractions or different types of balloons. The penguins are the bane of my existence. I'm really bad at dealing with them. I've only just figured out my own technique, which is of course the roundabout. But yeah, also the difficulty for the boss is quite weird because it can either be really difficult or really easy, and it all depends on the shots, right? Because most bosses are difficult no matter the shot, but if you go into the second phase with roundabout, it's not difficult at all. In the third phase roundabout, it's easy. First phase is easily countered by the pea shooter. Number 21, Baroness von Bonbon. My biggest issue with Baroness von Bonbon is the RNG on the mini-bosses. They're all simple, they all are counterable, but some of them have really awkward parts where it's very difficult not to get hit. Or you feel like you shouldn't have gone hit. For example, the Muffin Man who jumps, even after he's jumped away, there is still some splatter of cake left afterwards, which can still hit you. So even though your gut feeling is, oh, he's jumped up, I need to move now, oh, I've been hit by something that was left behind, which I find incredibly annoying. I do like the mini-bosses, although they are quite simple design-wise. And I do like the creativity of it chasing after, like the castle chasing after you at the final phase. I really like the roller because the parry is so satisfying to parry the roller, but the heads, it's just awkward trying to dodge them, especially when the roller comes out because you're trying to get your parries while that head is just targeting you. Number 20, Rumour Honeybottoms. Now I know that there are a lot of fans of Rumour Honeybottoms, and I get it. My issue really is just the RNG and the awkwardness of moving around the platforms. Generally, I actually get hit more on the first phase than any other phase, which is quite awkward, but Larry, he comes out of nowhere and he gets in your way and he distracts you and you get hit by the bombs. Visually, she is brilliant. I love the way that they transition between phases for her. I love the fact that she randomly turns into a sorcerer to turn into a plane. Like, that is crazy. I love it. I love it. The only big downfall for me, of course, is the platforms and the music. The music, in my opinion, is the worst in the game. It's so boring. And I get it's supposed to be like a depressing sort of cityscape, but I just don't enjoy it at all. Number 19, King Dice. Whoa, 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 whoa. I know. I put King Dice in number 19, but hear me out, okay? The music, it's repetitive. Like, it's decent music, but when you hear it over and over again, it drains my mind. I really like the music at the end, when you actually activate King Dice himself. Not to mention the fact that this boss takes so long. When I first played the game, I found King Dice to be the hardest boss in the game. But it's because I wasn't very good at parrying, right? So I could get through the mini-bosses, which took me ages, then I'd get to King Dice, and my morale would just be hit, because I couldn't parry the cards for my life, right? And I get that that's my fault, and that's why I'm putting King Dice here. You can have your own opinion, but I couldn't do it, and I lost my will to play the game for a bit. Some charms make mini-bosses genuinely obsolete, like Pirouetta. Smoke Bomb makes that not even a boss, when if you don't have Smoke Bomb, she's, in my opinion, the hardest mini-boss there is. Number 18, Dr. Carl's Robot. From here up, I'd honestly say that every single boss is good. Okay, every boss here is good. I've just got my own issues with some of them, but they are still well-made bosses, and I genuinely like them. Now, what drags Dr. Carl's Robot down is the third phase. It's so lazy, in my opinion. They just made it a bullet hell where he moves up and down a bit. It's awkward as well because, like, those platforms that move up and the foreground images blocking your view, it feels a little cheap when you get hit sometimes. The first phase, in my opinion, is one of the best phases in the game. It's so cool, it's so creative. Play the boss how you want to play it. So if you find the laser difficult, you can get rid of the laser first. Pretty much every time you play the game, unless you've got your own technique, which I do, you will have a different boss fight, which is great. Second phase is a little awkward, but overall, I really like the design of the first phase. I also like the robot looks so cool. Number 17, Cagney Carnation. The thing that really elevates Cagney Carnation in the community is his music and his general design. He looks cool. I mean, he's just a flower, but it's just a cool boss design. And the music is it's so good. It isn't the best in the game, in my opinion, but it is brilliant. I genuinely find him to be the hardest boss in Inkwell Isle 1. The first phase, especially on Expert, with all those munchers, it's just really annoying, and the way I get through it feels really cheap. I just sit with Crackshot and kill all the munchers, and that is boring. Just inherently, that is boring. I really like the third phase and the second phase on Expert, but the first phase just drags it down because, like, everything will hit you out of nowhere. It feels quite claustrophobic, to be honest, because you've got the nut in the air flying around, you've got the seed pods coming down out of nowhere, and you've got the munchers rising up from below, and suddenly he'll just throw his head at you, and it does feel a little cheap when you get hit like that. Number 16, Mortimer Freeze. This is the first DLC boss on the list, and there is a good reason for him being slightly lower than most. It all comes down to his difficulty. I found him to be the hardest to beat the first time round. Saltbaker was difficult, but Mortimer Freeze, every single phase, you don't get a chance to breathe. Second phase is genuinely just crazy. Like, you cannot stop moving or you're going to get hit. What does make Mortimer Freeze a really enjoyable boss fight for me, though, is his music. It is so well done for the boss. Usually it's well timed with the transitions. It's just so satisfying. I also really like the creativity on each of the phases. Him starting off as a floating wizard. I like wizards, that works. and then turning into a massive snowman that just transforms into a fridge for no reason. But it makes sense. It does make sense for his boss. And then finally going up into the sky and having to fight him as an icicle. It's so cool. Number 15, Moonshine Mob. You'll notice that I think very highly of most DLC music, but Moonshine Mob, it takes the cake for one of the best pieces of music in the game. It's just so good. I love every single instrument they use in this. They've got a singer who's just babbling on about nothing. It just sounds good. It sounds good. It links to the second phase as well, because of course the singer's actually, you fight the singer of the music, which is incredible. And if you get hit, it changes the music. Every time the music becomes an attack, it changes the music. It's brilliant. I really like the design as well and creativity of the boss. So the fact that it isn't just one sole thing, it is it's a mob. It is a group of bugs and just general animals that are trying to beat you. I love the snail mafia boss. That is the coolest thing I think they've ever added into the game. The thing that really brings it down for me slightly is that I find it quite awkward, especially the first and third phase. The tongue and the fighting balls really feel quite overwhelming. Sometimes I feel like the spider knows, it knows when you're about to drop down and under it, or you're going to stay up at the platform. Number 14, Hildeberg. You'll also notice from this list, I really like plain bosses. Generally, I don't think there is anything inherently bad about this boss. Its design is incredible. Creativity-wise, it's so cool that it turns into different star sign sort of things. It is a blimp, which is cool, and at the end, it's the thing that really brought me into Cuphead. Genuinely, the first thing I saw about Cuphead was Hildeberg's last phase, and I thought, that just looks wacky. It looks crazy, and I love it. It looks so cool. Of course, I'm talking about the moon. The music is decent. It very much fits with the boss. I wouldn't say it's the best in the game, but it's definitely good. The only things that are kind of would be the difficulty, because sometimes I do feel like I get hit out of nowhere from little shots and projectiles. Number 13, the Devil. When it comes to design and creativity, I absolutely love the Devil. The final phases are some of the best phases in all of Cuphead. I really enjoy how you can systematically beat all the different enemies he brings out. On the first phase, it feels a little awkward sometimes because it is RNG on his attacks. I very rarely get through the spinning fire attack because of the general awkwardness of it, but most of his attacks can be countered. You just have to be quick. His music changes between phases, which I really like. The first phase, it feels very sinister. It feels like you genuinely are fighting the devil. But then as you go down into hell, the music changes to be a mixture of old Cuphead boss music with his own little devilly spin on them. I like that quite a lot. He feels powerful. He feels genuinely quite scary. It's brilliant. Number 12, Ribby and Croak. From here on, I think all of these bosses are quality, and I'm so happy that they're in the game. Now, Ribby and Croak is, in my opinion, the best Inkwell Isle 1 boss. They have really good music, very fitting of Cuphead. The first Cuphead music I actually heard. Their design is very fitting, and their boss transitions are so nice. The frog rolling, for some reason, it just fits so well, and it's an attack as well, which is cool. The casino at the end, even though it makes absolutely no sense why two frogs turn into a casino, it works. It really does work. I like the RNG on this because it means the third phase isn't too easy, but generally the patterns on them are quite easy to get used to, so it doesn't feel too challenging. With a plan as well, they are quite easy to beat. I think this boss is a good boss. Number 11, Werner Werman. For visuals and creativity, Werner Werman takes the cake. I get that they've based it off of Tom and Jerry, but it was such a good fit for Cuphead. I really like the background image of the mouse hole and all the wartime sort of look. And I really like that they just decided, you know what, it could just be a rat, but why don't we put the rat in his homemade tank? His attacks are really cool, they're very fitting. And I really like the cat at the end. The cat works very well, especially the mice coming out of its mouth. The music's very fitting as well, very good. It's a bit repetitive, but it fits with Werner Werman. The first phase can be a little awkward, especially because most of the projectiles are quite difficult to avoid, but the second phase really brings it down for me, because it's such a claustrophobic phase. It feels like you can't move much at all. You just got to stay in one place and wait for the chance to move, and that is just boring for me. It's just boring, and it feels really unsatisfying when you get hit. Like, most of the time it's like, oh, I got hit, but in the second phase it's like, oh, that's just annoying, because usually it feels like I didn't deserve a hit there. Number 10, Jimmy the Great. Now, back in the day, I wasn't the biggest fan of Jimmy. His design and music really brought him back for me. People generally say they don't like Jimmy's music, but I think it's very fitting. It works very well with the boss transitions and phases. The creativity and visuals for this boss is incredible, because of course it's a genie. They can do whatever they want. So the first phase is probably the worst phase in my opinion. It feels quite awkward. The RNG, sometimes, like the sword attacks, I find it so difficult to avoid them, especially on expert. But the other two are quite easy, so it's like, the second I get the sword, sometimes I even just think about retrying, because it's like, there's no point. The puppet phase was the bane of my existence, I'm gonna be honest. The turban was so difficult for me to avoid. And of course the extra shots, it was just, oh, it's a nightmare. I've kind of gotten used to it now, but I still find it reasonably difficult. And the final phase, it's so cool. I just like big things. He's massive here. It's so cool. I like how his hands come in doing a bit of magic, and the pyramids are a very cool touch. But yeah, the only thing that really drags it down is his difficulty, because some phases or variants of phases are incredibly easy while others are incredibly hard. Number 9, Calamaria. Now, Calamaria has, in my opinion, the best boss music in the game. It's satisfying, it fits with the transitions, and just all the instruments used are magnificent. Her design and general creativity is good. I like the first and second phase, it's really creative. I like how she dances in the second phase, that's like very cool, very sinister. But what drags it down is the third phase. I think her head floating through that cave is really quite goofy. I don't like it at all. Not to mention the difficulty aspect, because her boss is completely and utterly RNG. The first phase is RNG, the second phase is, oh, let's hope I don't get hit by a projectile while I'm literally frozen in place. And the third phase, objects that appear can get really annoying to avoid, especially when you're like being frozen every 5 seconds. But I still find her fun for some reason. I guess it's because the RNG makes the boss different every single time, so I really enjoy playing against her. I really enjoy the aesthetic as well of the whole boss, flying over the sea. Just, yeah, really nice boss. Number 8, Howling Aces. When I first played against Howling Aces, I beat them first time. They were really easy for me for some reason. The tilt, I understood instantly, you know, I just tilted my head and it was quite easy. I really like all the phases. I like how mechanically they play. My only issue with the boss is that it doesn't feel like a Cuphead boss. The art style is very different to most of the other bosses. It feels very cartoony, but like modern cartoony. The music's alright. It is a very unique boss. It is a really fun boss. I really enjoy the third phase especially. The third phase is one of the best phases in the game. Visually, it is good. I like the art style. I like how all the characters are designed. I don't understand what the dog airship is, but it's a cool design. I especially like the lasers coming out of his paws. But yeah, overall solid boss. Number 7, Wally Warbles. Wally Warbles is probably the number 1 boss I replay the most. For some reason, I just find this boss incredibly fun to play. The first phase is fun, the second phase is a little awkward, but it's easy. The third phase I didn't like when I was younger, but generally like more now. The fourth phase is chaos. I'm just going to be real with you. In this footage, if we get to the fourth phase in time, it's shambles. I make so many mistakes. Because the first, second, and third phase isn't too difficult, I can always get to the fourth phase with at least 3 hit points left, which means I can get away with getting hit occasionally. Visually and creatively, I don't like it too much. I think he looks a little silly in the birdhouse, and I feel like the fourth phase they could have done for any boss really. Of course, it's just, oh, you've beaten him up, but he's still got a little bit of will to live. I love the animation after you beat him. But yeah, overall, really fun boss. Number 6, Glumstone the Giant. The thing with Glumstone is that he's an all-round good boss. There isn't really anything that is inherently bad about him. I'd say I don't have too much fun, especially on the second and third phase, because they are difficult, and the second phase especially, I feel like there isn't much of a strategy. It's just really focus on where the ball's going to land and if you're safe where you are. But I find that quite awkward. Other than that though, dashing between the platforms in the third phase is incredibly fun, although feels a little bit claustrophobic. And the first phase is so enjoyable. He has different things that he can call. He can call the bear, he can call the geese. I really like the cauldron attack, it's free parries. And the gnomes that randomly appear at the bottom are actually really cool. It's a very unique, creative boss. The music is very fitting for him. I really like the music. And I like how it changes with the boss phases. It works very well. Overall, very good boss. Number 5, Captain Brinybeard. Every boss from now on, by the way, I replay all the time because I really, really enjoy them. The only downside for Captain Brinybeard, in my opinion, is his music. At the start, it's the best tune in the game. I love it. It's so good. But from then on, it's very generic, very boring. It doesn't work for me. What really gives Captain Brinybeard the points are his visual elements and how fun it is. Everything that he adds is fun to avoid. It doesn't feel cheap when you get hit in this boss. There's so much to do, there's so much that he throws out at you, but it makes sense and doesn't feel cheap because there is that charge up period. He is slightly difficult because of all of the things that he does to you, which makes replayability slightly frustrating sometimes, but overall, really quite fun. Number 4, Chef Saltbaker. Chef Saltbaker is overall a really, really fun boss. Everything that he does is quite interesting. He reminds me of a Disney villain, I definitely think that's where they were going. The music works very well. Of course, it changes per phase, and that's very cool. I love how sinister it is. It's genuinely more sinister than the devil, which is really weird because he is just a salt baker. His design is amazing, every phase is unique, and I like the way that they made the glass shatter and how the salt works for the last phase. Generally, I have a lot of fun on this boss. I quite like the bullet hellness because the thing is, when you go into this boss, it starts with a bullet hell, so once you're through it, you can relax and you can enjoy the boss. But the bullet hell generally, it increases your skill level in Cuphead, so that when you replay the other bosses, it's like, oh, everything's a bit more chill here. I genuinely say this is the hardest boss in the game, especially on Expert. It really gives you a feeling of accomplishment, yeah. Number 3, the Phantom Express. The Phantom Express is all round such a fun and creative boss. I love the music. The music is incredible. I love how they incorporated train noises into it. Visually, it is amazing. The final phase especially is so fun in my opinion. I love the fact that it's such a tall train that runs on its tracks. It's so good. Creativity-wise, each phase is a different cart on the train. And I love that. I love the fact that you're on a push trolley next to the train, so it feels quite, interactive with the fact that you're chasing down this train and then it starts chasing you, which is, it's so good. The only thing that really brings it down is the fact that some phases can be quite awkward and difficult, so the first phase especially, if you don't have the right shot, is almost impossible to get through. But other than that, really, there aren't that many issues with the boss. I just really, really have a good time on it. Number 2, Esther Winchester. This is, in my opinion, the best plane boss. When I first, got into it, it felt mental. I thought, how am I going to beat this boss? But in one run, I just managed to do it. It was really fun. The music gives you energy to beat the boss. It's such good music. If you've listened to the whole thing, the end is incredible. They have hoof trotting noises implemented into the song, and it actually works. I love how the music works with the boss transitions as well. Each phase has its own music, especially the second phase really works well. The design is really cool, really creative. I love this boss. Every part of its design is good. I'd say the final phase is a little silly looking, but it works for the way the boss is there. And difficulty wise, it's difficult, yes, but it's manageable, so if you know what you're doing, you can get through it fairly easily, and there are different techniques, but it is still a challenge, and that makes it really fun. And finally, number 1, is Grim Matchstick. Now, if you've seen my YouTube banner, this wouldn't be a surprise for you. Grim Matchstick's design and general boss is so good. The music I absolutely love. I love the music. I love his design, like visually and creatively. His final phase is so cool. It feels so sinister. I love the clouds and the way they move across and make the general footing quite difficult. But when you play this boss and you've gotten good at it, it feels very good. It feels like you're a pro at Cuphead, if I'm being honest. Like, anybody that, if you play Grim Matchstick over and over again and get good at it, you will feel incredible at the game. I love how the third phase changes your playstyle, not spamming, but being patient. Because if you spam, you're going to screw yourself over with all the fireballs. Choose your shots wisely, position yourself well so you don't get hit by the flamethrower, and oh, it's so satisfying when you get through the boss. The second phase is a tad awkward, but it is manageable when you know the technique. Have a look at tips and tricks if you need help with that. But yeah, it's such a good boss. I love it. And that's why it's number 1. Thank you guys so much for watching. Did you agree with this video? Let me know down below. I'd also really appreciate it if you subscribed. It will literally take only a second. Thank you so much for the support recently, by the way. Anyways, see you in the next one.